And this is kind of like, Krakatoa. This is the Krakatoa of active imaginations, and maybe I'll call it that when I title it. In this video, I want to run through the interpretation or the discussion of this video that you see, my fifth active imagination video. There's some interesting themes there, and hopefully you're somebody who has discovered active imagination, or maybe you've known about it for some time. And what I'm hoping to do is demonstrate yet again what you can do once you have had this experience, and once you have done your active imagination. Once you have written it down, you have your transcript, or maybe you have drawn it. However you have expressed it, going back over it, seeing things in hindsight, and hopefully learning from them. Hopefully this is beneficial to you in showing you how to go the next step with active imagination. And so let's get to it. So what I have before us is the actual transcript that I took for my notes when I had the experience, and I wrote them down. Then I digitized them, or I transcribed them so I can search them and transmit them, obviously in an easier manner. So I hope that I'm kind of toying with having me in the corner here on camera. Hopefully that is a help rather than a distraction. I just think that seeing me, I don't know, in some way might give some kind of personal connection to all this, so that you understand, I'm an actual person. I'm not just some random person out there just doing all of this with no heart, no greater purpose. No, I'm just a normal guy. And in the words of SpongeBob, I hope my horrible ugliness will not be a distraction for you. So, with that, I have removed a few things, like the date. I wrote down the time. I've kind of tried to simplify this so that it's all a little bit easier to follow, larger font and so on. So my purpose when I went into this experience was, and again, it helps to understand, and if you've watched the earlier videos, then you'll understand, I was having health problems. I was losing my job over these health problems. And so I was really, Jung really appealed to me, and he still does in many ways. But I was seeking my inner self, retreating there to seeking guidance. I was feeling lost. I was just seeking direction, especially as losing my job and having these health problems was confronting me. They were confronting me with, who am I? What am I made to do? My personality, how does that fit in with a career, with goals, plans, work, and so on? And now let's get into the meat of the transcript. The usual invitation, by now, that's simply just inviting the unconscious to, I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn more about myself. I'm receptive to what you have to say. So again, I close my eyes. The technique video kind of covers my approach to this kind of thing. I close my eyes, I kind of focus, and then, like when you're daydreaming, you're kind of like when you're about to fall asleep, like you'll see images come and go. And then there's this image that kind of sticks. It just kind of like, I know this is the one. And I just let it unfold, and I see this lush green jungle. It's obviously being tended and cultivated in some way. It reminds me of Eden. It's kind of dark and cloudy out. I wish I could pull up the thumbnail. I tried to capture this in the thumbnail of the video. I'm not just being like artsy and all that. I'm trying to give some impression of what I actually saw. I have tried to, using Photoshop, using Corel Painter, I've tried to paint and convey what it is I saw with my own hands. And I have failed miserably because I'm not really gifted as an artist. But I have taken licensable, free to use images and kind of worked them together on my own in Photoshop to try to convey something of what I've seen. And it's dark outside, it's cloudy, but it's definitely Edenic. And that is a theme that has recurred numerous times. And in the last video I said this would recur, this would come back, and sure enough, it has. And I see the surroundings. It's very surreal to me. And as usual, the presence of another Adam comes in. I wonder, who is he? And he introduces himself in the usual laconic manner. He just says Adam. It's very common, especially in these earlier experiences, to just have, very basic introduction, not much given, and it kind of falls upon me then to explore. And I guess that's kind of a lesson I have seen, having done this, at least at first. It was the burden was on me to engage with the unconscious. The burden was on me to make the first move. What are you? And why did I say what are you? Is because I was kind of skeptical, and to this day I still am skeptical about certain aspects of active imagination. I have not practiced channeling. I don't believe in channeling. I mean, I believe it's possible, yes, but I do not endorse it. I do not wish anyone to engage in it. Automatic writing. And so, yes, I am kind of skeptical. What are you? Yes, you portray yourself as Adam, but I want to know exactly what you are. And that attitude of skepticism, I would say, as I reflect on this, I have not done some, 5 hours of sitting here pre-preparing and filtering out what I'm going to say. I'm trying to speak now truly from my heart as my thoughts come to me concerning not only this experience, but just active imagination as a whole in general. What are you? That's skepticism. Because it would be naive to just say, oh, I'm speaking with, Adam. That's obviously incredibly naive. And really, I'm kind of asking, what exactly, speaking to my subconscious, what exactly are you trying to represent? What exactly are you, what component of myself are you representing? And he says, your inner man, meaning your inner human, hence the connection back to Adam. My inner human, my inner man, my inner person. I am that which makes up all humans. I am what makes them human, and I'm inside you. And then, so this is kind of a little bit unprecedented up to this point. But this pattern, and this is so interesting, this pattern continues. And seeing where these patterns begin and how then later active imaginations will continue, how these new elements in your experience will begin, and then going back over the transcript, you see them, and then you see later active imagination experiences, you see this pattern continue. It's very interesting to me. But the pattern that I'm speaking of is this. I simply ask a question, a 3-word question. That's all I've said so far. And he just launches into this, I guess you might call it a sermon, but it's really just kind of a, multi-paragraph long thought. And again, as you can see, we'll get into this, but as you see, I respond very briefly, and then he goes on, he goes on and on and on and on and on, this entire page. I mean, the active imagination is essentially, how many words is this? Roughly 350 words, maybe 400, of him answering a single question. And that's basically the entire experience. And how did I know it was over? Which is one of the big questions. How do you know when it's over? Johnson in Inner Work discusses this. How do you know when it's over? Well, he kind of tells me, but you also kind of, I guess as an intuitive person, if it means anything to you with Myers-Briggs, I'm INFJ. If that means anything to you, it used to mean a lot to me, but I've kind of, take it or leave it. It might mean something, it might not, I don't know. But I just kind of knew that way down there, that was the end. And sure enough, it was. You seek Eden, you seek wholeness, healing, harmony, and that's exactly what I was seeking with this, with my purpose. And so that's another thing to notice, is that it is responding to my purpose. Sometimes, just speaking from other experiences that I haven't made videos of, it will not respond in the way that you would expect, having, your intentions and what you're seeking, what you feel that you need from this experience and what you're hoping to accomplish with meeting the unconscious and harmonizing with it and becoming at peace with it, having peace with it and understanding yourself. And so you, with all these goals in mind, you do have more specific goals, understanding uh, my inner self, really who I am at the core, just seeking guidance. And it's going to accomplish this not always in the way that you expect, but um, in my experience so far at least, um, it seems rather obvious to me that at least my subconscious is seeking peace. It is seeking really what I'm seeking consciously, seeking to harmonize with who I am, harmonize with the conscious self in the same way that the conscious self is seeking to harmonize with the unconscious self. Let's continue. This is the theme of the entire experience. What he's going to be expounding as this goes on is my relationship with the world. And that's what I was facing when I was facing job loss and my health, basically going down the tubes for a brief time until it was diagnosed and treated, and is still being treated. But how am I, especially in these circumstances, how am I relating to the world? And another thing that I will note, especially as you read, we're talking about Adam, we're talking about Eden, we're talking about the world, he's mentioning Cain, sin, this cup language. Like in Isaiah, I think it mentions, I can't remember, I looked this up just the other day, those who, I probably get this backwards, those who set a table for fortune, and those who pour a cup of mixed drink for destiny. That's part of my worldview, is what I'm saying. And so my subconscious is not like a Chinese person from 687 AD, female, northern China. No, my subconscious is, it's you. It shares your worldview and your conscious worldview and everything that you believe and you have taken in and embraced and have imbibed to form who you are. Your subconscious reflects that. It's not speaking to me as a totally different person, the totally different personality, a totally different set of beliefs. It is coming to me, and I recognize myself in what it is saying. And I think that's one of the, not a foolproof way, but it is one of the tests of active imagination. If you, like me, are questioning, is this really different from channeling, which I want nothing to do with personally. I see in myself my own worldview being expressed similarly, yet in some manner differently than how I would consciously express it. I guess you would say, in another way, we are on the same page. My subconscious and my conscious self, we are on the same page. We have the same worldview, the same building blocks for our thinking, our beliefs, and so on. And it's expressing those in a similar and yet different way. And that I would just add I guess it's one of the confirmations to me that this is not just, you can't simplistically squash everything down and say, oh, this is just a bunch of psychological garbage. It's just a bunch of nothing. It's just your imagination. It's just channeling or something like this. I incline towards that way of thinking. I know you probably don't feel like you know me, and yes, I am guarded to some extent, especially just naturally being an introvert, but also just on the internet. I'm not just going to go blab my soul out to the entire, oftentimes critical world. I know you don't feel like you know me, and a lot of you, I'm sure there are many of you out there who are watching this or who have seen, in all likelihood, are introduced to this channel through the technique video. I'm sure there are many of you that we would be on the same page, that I would love to know. It's just that I'm not that kind of person to just spill my guts. All of this to say, I see in myself the subconscious. I see in the subconscious what I see in my conscious self. And he goes on and he's really drawing this contrast with the world, me and the world, because that's what I was facing. Me and my job, me and my health. And especially, the health as it relates to the job, how can you survive in this world? Do you sell out to it? I mean, that's really the question. And that's a question that has been raised in my mind, that had been raised in my mind in my previous experiences. I believe the fourth experience one, and I discuss this at length when I do discuss it. That's dealing with me. Do you sell out? Do you sell out? I mean, what are you willing to stand for? Are you a hedonist and you are willing to go along with whatever you need to go along with in order to, succeed in however you would define that? And for me, consciously and as I'm seeing subconsciously through this character of Adam, humanity, not being just a robot, not destroying your soul in order to, have material gain. He's saying, no, don't do that. But how he is doing this is saying that by doing that, that whole materialistic, hedonistic, naturalistic way of life, this is part of the world. That's what most people do, in addition to being what characterizes society in general. In other words, it's just part of our culture. That's the norm. Every time you see ads on television, when you're streaming, whatever, it's putting forth this. It is putting the world's message before you. The world is a sponge seeking to absorb, meaning that it's drawing you in. It wants to absorb you. It wants to, like the Borg in Star Trek, it wants to assimilate you. It wants to kind of take a part of your soul and assimilate you. That's really the word for it, is assimilate you. And oneness with it, you lose your humanity. That's the sacrifice. There's a sacrifice that it's seeking, and that's your soul. And what is humanity really? It goes back to Eden, being in good relationship. This is kind of how I've defined it, having thought about it, having had it assert itself to me, this theme in my active imagination. It's being at peace and in harmony and in right relationship with God, yourself, those around you, and the natural world, the land, your environment, I guess you would say. And then becoming one with the world, in this particular usage of that term here, you are giving up your humanity, losing part of it. You are not doing what you as a human are made to do. Therefore, not doing what you are made to do, you will not have the right relationship, the peace, and the flourishing that you as a creature are made to have. And I already know what you're thinking here. Isn't that a rather pessimistic way of viewing life? Isn't that just such a Debbie Downer kind of way of looking at things? And yeah, I mean, it is, in a certain sense. There is peace to be had. There is flourishing to be had. There is well-being. There is joy. There is right relationship with family, friends, where you live physically, the environment, and so on. There is a way to have a job that is rewarding and enjoyable. And the constant state of the world, as Adam is describing, Adam, I say in quotes, maybe you can't see my hand, Adam is saying to me, that way is antithetical to that peace. And I think that you, without going into this for any significant length of time, I think that you kind of see this. I mean, everyone has problems. Everybody is hiding behind a mask to some extent or another. And Jung talks about this. This is the persona. Everybody is facing battles to one degree or another, with various numbers of battles. Everyone has their issues. Everyone to some extent naturally is discontent and is searching for some fulfillment, some satisfaction, something that will give them the peace and the flourishing that they are hoping for. And the world has a lot to offer, doesn't it? Promising these things, but so often and so many things. And I would say the overwhelming majority seem to be falling short of their promise. And that's kind of what Adam is warning me of here. It is a paradox. The world made up of humanity becomes less human. Now, is that just a bunch of word salad that sounds, it just sounds so profound, but it's really just a bunch of garbage? I don't think it is. I think, and because he expounds this later on down here, he's going to expound this, and this is one of the reasons that I remain so interested and so truly gripped by the encounters I have in active imagination, is because of it is saying things that, I mean, yes, you might hear them from a handful of people in your life, a handful of the, people who are truly worthy of being, revered for their understanding. But by and large, I'm hearing things that I don't hear. And certainly, as we're talking about the world pop culture, or just culture in general, the institutions, the great politicians and spokespeople, whatnot, all the people that you know who I'm talking about. No, I don't hear this at all. The world made up of people, but those people are becoming less human because they are making sacrifices. They're making sacrifices in order to become part of the world. The words to Cain, sin crouches at the door. This is from Genesis. Sin crouches at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. Its desire is for you. And if you understand, if you're familiar with Hebrew, the biblical Hebrew, that is not modern Hebrew necessarily, you understand that this is not saying, it just wants you. It is saying that its desire is to have control, have mastery over you, is what it's saying. And this is the New American Standard, 1995, which is my preferred translation. Its desire is to master you, to control you, but you must master it. But you must master it. Mastering it is, you must master it, and this is a way of saying it wants to master you. This humanity has not, cannot, and will not do. This is the paradox, made up of humanity becoming less human. They become more like animals, and the whole basis of that is the consumerism. Is the whole basis of that is this consumption. Constantly buying, constantly wanting more, craving more, constantly coveting. And I was facing that. The reason that's coming up is because I was facing that with this job. If I sold out, I might succeed. I might do well. I might be able to consume more. Consuming so that they may be consumed. They're consumed by their own sin, in other words. They're mastered by their sin, leading to oneness with the world in exchange for being given things to consume. And then they themselves are consumed, becoming like animals and losing their humanity. That's kind of the whole, linking this all together. Do you seek the path out of this? Well, yes, if I do. I do. You see by my very life right now, obviously I'm seeking, the answer to this whole dilemma here, this whole question. Well, then listen, lean not upon your own understanding, from Proverbs 3, I believe. To become human as the world sees it is to become corrupted. For humanity in all its glory as it sees itself is corrupted. In other words, that the way the world, as we have kind of tried to briefly explain what this is, its very view of things is corrupted. Its priorities are wrong. Its motives are wrong. What it is seeking is wrong. And so when it sees you not going along with it to become absorbed, not making the sacrifice, not giving your pinch of incense to Caesar, so to speak, it looks upon you as the abomination, Adam is saying to me. But really it itself, because of it's seeing it, this is backwards, giving your pinch of incense to Caesar. That is the corruption. That is the abomination. And there's no political message. That is a It's what the early Christians were forced to do upon pain of often death and persecution. But it's when I'm using this illustration, I'm saying you're selling out. You don't believe in doing something, but you do it anyway to avoid the pain, to avoid the inconvenience, to avoid the loss that comes along with it. That's what I'm saying. There's a greater humanity, meaning a greater way of life, a greater form of humanity, a greater way to flourish. It's do not consume greedily. Within measure is okay, but it's this greedy, covetous, avaricious lust and thirst to have, consume. I mean, yes, we're talking about money, which was kind of how all of this gets tied in. It's amazing, all the things that kind of get drawn in with your job. You have health problems, and then that threatens your job, and then you start thinking about money. And it's not just about your needs, it's about all these hopes and all these things that you wish to have, so much. It starts kind of, it's like a butterfly effect. It starts out as a small thing. Oh, you have a health problem. And then it kind of snowballs into all these questions, start flowing out all the implications of everything that is unfolding in your life, as it was for me at this time, kind of unfold. Do not drink the cup. It's kind of placing this cup before you. And to use the illustration that I just mentioned, it's placing the bowl of incense before you, and it's saying, just take a pinch, just throw it in the fire. Go ahead and sacrifice everything that you hold dear and believe in. And then, you'll be okay at that point. You'll be fine. They promise. The world promises. Do not drink of the cup placed before you by the world. It places before each man a cup, and many then assume this is the only cup. Well, if I see on television that I need to, every single year I need to go trade in my 1-year-old car and buy a new one. That's, it's what you do. It's the, thus and such sales event, or I need to go buy a new phone every year. And I'm giving these examples only in an illustrative manner of the many, many ways that we are constantly beckoned to spend our money and to pattern our lives in these ways. But just because, this is what everybody does, right? This is what the companies say to do. This is what the ads say to do. This is what my friends, this is what this rich person over here, this is what this celebrity does. And there's this cup being set before you. It's an option, but many people seem to think that it's the only option. The singular cup from which they must drink. Well, I've got to have a job. I've got to have money to afford the brand new iPhone, or I've got to be able to drive a certain, I can't be seen driving a 5-year-old car. Oh my gosh, that would be, what would people think of me? What would the neighbors think if I dare buy a 10-year-old car, if that's all I can afford? Heaven forbid that. That whole keeping up appearances, wear your persona, deny who you are, deny what you believe in order to live up to this unlivable, constant, driving need to consume unto nothing. Consuming for this is not gaining anything. You're constantly doing this. The status that you're gaining is fleeting, and these same people that you're seeking status from will throw you away for anything. You're not gaining anything. You're not gaining any kind of love or any kind of lasting loyalty, any kind of real friendship. You're gaining nothing at all through this consumption. This is not so. Do not drink of it. That this is not the only way. This is not the only way. This is the illusion that this is the only way. But like beasts, swine, cattle, they, the world, merely consumes thoughtlessly what is placed before them, or before it, I guess. They consume thoughtlessly what is placed before them. Do not be like this, Adam is warning me. And they, like their forefathers, will become as their forefathers. There's no end to the, if you've, studied history, there's no end to these, to the stories of people, in other words, people have been facing the same conundrums for generations and generations and generations. And that all of our illusions of being better than the people of the past, better than our forefathers, following this path, you'll end up where they are. You'll end up no better than they are. They blame those who came before for the state of the world. Always blaming, oh, it's this, it's that. You know what I'm talking about. Blaming the forefathers, blaming ancestors, blaming those in the past for the state of the world. But behold with amusement, he says, they drink from the same cup. They seek the same vain, materialistic endeavors and ends that their forefathers, whom they blame, did. They seek to cure the world according to their own corrupt understanding in order to ease the pain and guilt of doing no differently than their forefathers, wishing that they could do otherwise, and implied in this is that they can't. They're driven along like beasts. They can't. They want, they crave, they must have these things. They must obtain, they must have this status, they must have this level of wealth, and so on. And all of this that I've been saying is kind of Adam saying, in this cup, that human tendency is before you now. And as you are facing your situation with your health and therefore your job, are you going to just flail around and impulsively seek that which will be the next way to obtain this? Or are you going to take this time as an opportunity to reevaluate life, reevaluate your priorities, to look upon this whole situation with wisdom and slowly, thoughtfully, and wisely conclude, what should we do? What should we do? They behold the singular cup and foolishly drink it down. And in some sense, deep down, they see it self-serving. They see it's vain. They know, I mean, only a fool would say, oh, if only I could live like Taylor Swift or whoever it is. Oh, if only I could be LeBron James, if, constantly chasing this. Oh, if I just, maybe next week I'll buy 5 lottery tickets instead of 4. Maybe, that'll give me an extra 20% edge or 25% chance of, finally being able to buy this and drive a Lamborghini and go and eat at 5-star restaurants and do all these things. In some sense, people must understand this is nothing. I mean, this is just self-serving and vain. It doesn't help anyone else. It's narcissistic. It's empty. And this pursuit has produced the very state of the world. The very state of the world that they both love and hate. I mean, they want these things. In some sense, they love them with an erotic, cheap, kind of superficial, emotional love. And yet they hate it because it never gives them peace. And they never have rest, and they never attain, and they never gain these things, and they never flourish. They never enjoy life and what it should, have. Relationships, family, children, loving parents, contentment, and so on. And it's like an addiction. It's like a drug. I mean, they both love it and they hate it. And I guess all of this, where is this all coming from? Well, I guess one answer would be, well, 2 answers would be understanding who I am, that I'm not saying this all high and mighty like I've never felt this before. Of course I have. Of course I felt these things and the allure and the draw of this way of thinking, of course. So on the one hand, yes, it's speaking from my own personal experience. On the other hand, it's just speaking from having seen, myriads of people live this lifestyle and pursue this and follow this all too unfortunately human tendency. And so drawing from what I know of myself and what I've seen of other people, my subconscious is developing all of this. They hate that which they are, the element of self-loathing, and thus they command others and themselves to love who they are. As if, all this detestability and negativity, well, if we just get everyone to just affirm me and love me, then I won't have to feel as guilty and I won't have to really recognize the detestable nature and the negative aspects of myself. We just blindly affirm everything and that'll be fine. Just sweep it all under the rug and it'll be okay. And we'll use force to do this if we need to. That's how, in other words, it's a very strong desire to dissipate their self-hatred. Behold the cycle. They consume so they may no longer be consumed. They love so they may no longer hate. In other words, all this blind affirmation is so that they may forget the detestable things that they hate about themselves. And one of the what is the word? One of the boons, I don't want to use it. I sound like frickin' Fraser Crane. One of the helpful things of active imagination is you are confronted with the negative components of yourself that you would in all likelihood never willingly face and never willingly behold. And rather than splitting your brain, splitting your mind, and I don't mean like in the antiquated use of the word schizophrenia, I mean you and your soul, deep inside, you know that you're totally different from who you present yourself to be. Your persona dominates. Rather than doing this, there's a better way. But what he is describing is that blind affirmation so that we don't have to face what we know is true of ourselves, and not just something, that we can change, but something immutably part of yourself that you dislike. And let me get real personal and hopefully, put my money where my mouth is. Something that I really hate about myself is social anxiety. I mean, I hate it. And there's no telling what I could have done in my life had I not had tremendous social anxiety. But rather than, I don't know, I mean, there's so many ways that you could try to shy away from it, no pun intended. There's so many ways that you can try to get away from this. Oh, I'm a victim. I guess that would be one way. Oh, I'm a victim. How dare, anybody do anything that would make me feel uncomfortable because you're just discriminating against me and my disability. Well, rather than take this approach, I have just simply come to face and accept that I have social anxiety. And yes, there are limitations that come along with that. And I personally hate having social anxiety. Not in some trivial manner, but legit social anxiety. I mean, it's not a joke. It's very real. And I've tried to deny that. I've tried to say, oh, this is something I'll grow out of. That's what I told myself when I was a teenager. Oh, I'll grow out of it when I mature, get experience. Or you say, it's really not that bad. Everybody's like this. Well, then, you have life experience and you find out, no, not everyone is like this at all. So there are ways that you can kind of sweep it under the rug. But I just had to accept this, without belaboring that. It's been a difficult and long-term process. And how do you live in light of it? And how do you manage it and all this kind of thing? But, I feel much more at peace and much more well-rounded as a person, much more whole having accepted this rather than demand everyone, treat me with kid gloves as a disabled person or whatever, you might do, or rather explaining away this and say, well, everyone's like this, or, oh, it's not that bad, or, oh, I'll grow out of it, rationalizing it, denying it, but coming to terms with it rather. And I feel truly much more capable of flourishing and handling life in a wise and in a wise manner that helps me to flourish with it, in spite of it, I guess I should say. Let's continue. Let's finish. It's really not that long. I may not read every single word of this. He's basically going to continue. Who has succeeded but one, obviously referring to Christ. Many have tried. No one can succeed. This is the way of the world, in other words. This is the way of the natural man, as it's called. Another paradox. And this is something that everyone who is familiar with the Apostle Paul will understand completely. Slavery to God is true freedom. True freedom. Freedom in the world is indeed slavery. As Jesus said, all who commit sin are slaves to sin. And Paul goes on to say, we have been freed in Christ to sin. We have been made slaves to God, slaves to righteousness. In other words, you are, as creatures, always You are not an autonomous being with capable of doing anything you want. I mean, uh, you can't control how your children will look. You can't control their personality. You can't control what will happen to you tomorrow. You can't determine the length of your life. You cannot add 1 inch to your height. All these things. In other words, there are things that uh, there are bounds to your life, to your existence. You are a creature, in other words. You are always a slave. You are always bound to something. Never, you are never a autonomous divine being capable of creating exactly the world that you want, and so on. So practically then, meaning, having said all of this, speaking practically, not in an abstract spiritual way, how then may you live your life, your days upon this earth as a free man? Not a slave to the world, in other words, but a slave to God. True freedom, in other words, attaining Eden, or in other more simplified terms, having peace and being capable of flourishing and living as who you are meant to be. How then may you then be free of this delusion and then be set free to live a life of flourishing, peace, goodness, love, all of these things, being capable of forgiving, being capable of blessing other people, being capable of giving into their lives and the lives of your children and leaving a legacy for them that will carry on. And, I'm not a grandparent, Lord willing, one day, but, when you see them, your children have children, and if you live long enough to see your children's children have children, it changes your perspective on life in a radical manner. And it's not all about me at that point. You're eager and desirous to bless the generations that come and to pour into the lives of your children and their children and so on. This is what I'm saying, being a free man, being a free person, free woman. Trials and suffering will surely follow the righteous man, this you know. And the simplicity, I mean, to me, it's really amazing. The subconscious is, there's rhetorical structure here, isn't there? Because he started off with this consumption, right? This devouring. That's kind of how he introduced all of this. And then he goes off on a tangent here, a tangential yet related point, commenting on the state of the world. In other words, what has all this consumption done for the world? And then he finishes where he started. And so, he says initially, do not consume, because this is what it's done to the world. This is the kind of the fruit of that. And so, now I've not just told you, I've not just given you advice, and it's, I believe, sound advice. I've not just said, hey, do this or don't do this. I've demonstrated this is the fruit of doing this. This is why you shouldn't do this. Having said this, do not consume, do not devour, die to yourself. Become selfless, in other words. Pass over this cup set before you, for there is another. It's not the only cup. I guess I should say there's not just the cup of consumption. There's also the cup that necessarily follows the chaser. There is another. If you do not pass over this cup, if you do choose this very selfish and hedonistic way, you must drink this one that follows, the cup of wrath. Those who drink of the first cup will surely drink even the dregs of that cup. A cup of wrath. Wrath is often biblically used to, or described and likened to a cup. The cup of wrath. So this is kind of biblical language, and I guess, why is that so replete in this experience? That's really not surprising, given we're talking about Adam and Eden, which is where this takes place, and all the language. It's not surprising. And that is part of the reason that, I tried to look for, in the thumbnail, I tried to look for some image that would capture what I saw, and I can still see even right now when I had this experience. I believe that's a statue of Jesus from, I think, South America somewhere. I didn't intend, I wasn't searching statues for Jesus, or statues of Jesus. I wasn't looking for that, but it was the closest thing. He had a beard, I wouldn't say Middle Eastern looking, but he certainly had, the tunic, or not the tunic, but like the robe, not the pants, the trousers, which are historically more recent thing. So he finishes, do not consume, rather face them. Don't cover the evil, corrupt desires. Don't deny that. Don't seek blind affirmation, but rather bring them to light. Acknowledge them, repent of them. Deal with them rather than ignoring them. Because if you ignore them, then just as sin desires to control you and overpower you, you must master it, and you will not master it. You will not conquer it if you ignore them and you sweep them under the rug. Bring them to light and face them. Let them be washed. Consumption dissipates, it deludes. Most certainly does. And those who cannot consume material things consume their neighbor. Behold the delusion, man was tempted and fell even without forefathers in material abundance. It's not just that, wealth corrupts. Not necessarily. The heart is corrupt, and therefore it does evil things and seeks evil things with material abundance. It's coming from the heart. It's not the riches necessarily that excuse me. It's not the wealth that corrupts, it's the person that corrupts the right use of that wealth. It's not the forefathers who cause you to act in this manner. That's the delusion. Oh, I can just blame the past, blame what has come before, blame the ancestors, blame those who created the system, and that way I can get over the need to address what is inside of me. The fountain of corruption lies within each one. If you take away greed, take away a man's possessions, he will surely find another expression for that same heart. You may dam the fountain up in one place, its course will soon find another by which to flow. I see this everywhere, to be honest with you. I don't try to get political, especially on this channel, but virtue signaling is a way that I see this taking place. I am such a good person. Oh, I've done this, I've done that. Okay, that's wonderful. You may convince yourself that you're such a wonderful person. But the truth is, we are all humans. We are all fallen creatures, fallen humans, and we all have this tendency, which has been described here, so far, this constant need to consume, to devour, to be selfish rather than selfless, to misuse wealth, to mismanage it, or to use it in an evil manner, for evil purposes, and so on. And that's self-deception. And what are the fruits, in other words, of all this lifestyle? Show us your fruits. All you who do cover over the evil, all of you who are consuming in this materialistic, hedonistic, narcissistic, selfish, short-sighted way, show us the fruits of this life. What has it produced? What has it begotten? Show us your fruits. We may see whether this feeling that you have attained and you are the most progressed form of humanity that's ever walked the earth, and you have wisdom. Well, let's look at your fruits that we may see what have you attained. If only you could hear the witness of your fruits, or of your wisdom, they say otherwise. Of your wisdom, they say otherwise. And it truly amazes me, and I will say this probably many, many times over the course of this channel. It truly amazes me what comes out of active imagination. The one sentence leading into the next, not just laconic one-word answers. I mean, that's kind of how it starts. And this is kind of like, Krakatoa. This is the Krakatoa of active imaginations, and maybe I'll call it that when I title it, because he just says Adam. And I say, what are you? And then he launches into this, and I give one brief answer, and then he goes on into all of this. And where does all of this come from? One sentence after the other, and I'm not, this is all taking place in 30 minutes. If I sat you down with a pad of paper and said, I'll give you 30 minutes, would I don't think I consciously could not just sit down and in 30 minutes come up with this, tracing this thought. And especially as I'm interpreting this is what's really amazing. When I'm interpreting this, it's even more clear to me the line by line logic. It's not just a brief one sentence answer. It's not just a pithy little statement. It's not just a syllogism here and then something unrelated comes next, and then the next sentence is just something totally, you can barely understand. It's sentence after sentence, all forming this line of thought and reasoning that is transpiring over the course of paragraphs and over the course of a couple pages, forming this cohesive unit of thought. It truly does, just kind of blow the mind. It really does to me. And that's why, whatever my reservations are with active imagination, there's a lot of good that I have personally received from it. Whatever else you may conclude, it cannot deny that there has been a tremendous amount of good that has come from this. Just the sheer cohesion, the sheer profundity at points. And you may say, well, it's not very profound. Hey, I knew that. Well, okay, that's great. I know of many, many people who would not know this were I to present it to them. And secondly, profundity not merely in the content, but in just the fact that it can put this content in this kind of logical order, in this ordered manner, is rather profound to me. It really does. It's a mystery to me. It really is. And how Jung understood this and discovered this, I don't know. And it is kind of, I don't know what the word is. It's just mysterious. I guess I'll just leave it at that. Bring outside what is inside. In other words, continue to do this. Unite subconscious and conscious. Understand, in other words, in a more simplified way, understand who you are. To fight what I've been describing, this ubiquitous tendency towards self-deception. This ubiquitous tendency towards self-deception. The self-deception that justifies all of this materialism and hedonism. Because no one escapes this. If you are a human being, in other words, you have this tendency to deceive yourself and to pursue the way of the world and drinking down and consuming and all this kind of thing that I've been describing. Behold Eden, freedom. Behold Eden. In Eden there is nothing with which you may deceive yourself. Everything's open. Everything's honest. Everything is truthful. Yet behold the cup. It entices, it draws in. And yes, I will say, speaking from experience, I have been enticed by this materialism, hedonism, and so on. I think all people have. But not all people have recognized that that's not the only way to live life, and that's not the only thing there is. Not all people have recognized that they're even enticed at all by this kind of thing. They just assume, well, that's just life. That's just how things are. By it, the cup, humanity becomes beasts. Yes, and there is a demonic element in those who wish this. They want humanity to become like beasts. They want humanity to become slaves of this consumption, this idolatry of self, in order that they may then do with humanity what they want. Death and destruction. All those who hate me love death. In Proverbs, truth, I believe, is speaking personified, of course. All those who hate truth love death. Whom will he devour? And this is life, as the world says. Drinking this cup, all this materialism, all this selfishness, all this status chasing, all this deceiving yourself about how you're such a wonderful, wonderful person, covering over the corrupt desires that we all feel and experience. And this is life. That's the question. Oh, what mockery, and I believe rightfully given, what progress they have made. Oh, yes, we are so progress. We are the best people who've ever lived. There's never been a time of such. Oh, yes, of course, if you understand that our technology is just simply the accumulation of knowledge over time, it's not like we have invented uh, mobile phones starting from we have invented how we are the first people ever to smelt copper into wire, and we are the first people ever to figure out how to refine gold and make glass, and we're the first people ever to invent screws to screw in your kit. No. We have built on knowledge that has been accumulated over millennia, over human history. Since technology began, a mobile phone, a smartphone is not possible without technology that was invented. If you think of refining copper, refining gold, screws, making metal into wire, and so on. This is not something that we just, in the last 20 years have invented. Oh, what progress. If you discount that our technology is that, and you look especially at the fruits of our world and what's going on right now, it's really hard to conclude, oh my, we're so progressed, and we're just the pinnacle of humanity, and we've never ever been as noble and well off as we have been today. In some ways, of course, people are, speaking for the world as a whole, people are better fed and better clothed now than they've ever been. Yes, sure. What about culturally, morally? What about inside? Have people flourished more in the past than they have now in terms of their own mental health, their own well-being, their own families' well-being, and so on? I would say it's impossible to argue that we have, although some will surely oppose that argument, of course. I mean, I'm not saying, nobody can disagree, of course. I just think that you just can't. I couldn't make the case that we have reached the ultimate expression of humanity. I'm not making that case, and I probably, hopefully, and in all likelihood, will never make that case. Is their fruit not bitter? What they call fruit is not sweet, it is bitter. In other words, they have it all backwards. It kills the living. They become the living dead, believing that their current condition is life, when in reality it's a kind of living death. Wouldn't the cattle like to believe this as they are driven to the slaughter? So do not consume. So on and so forth. The slavery paradox. Dying to slavery is to live. Living to slavery is to die. Which is a very poignant way that my subconscious, to my astonishment, has put all of this into a very pithy expression. Behold, that the world does not make it for you. It does not, in other words, the world does not, it's not going to help you. It doesn't want you to take this path that I, Adam, have just expounded. It does not want you to do this. Behold, Eden, trees, forests, and through it you must carve the path. By that path you will escape the world. Practically, meaning in terms of your everyday life, not in grand, abstract terms, but just simple, practical terms. You must forge the trail. It requires effort. In other words, it's not just going to fall. It's not just going to fall into your lap. You must exert effort to achieve this kind of thing. And that path is not in the world, but you must escape it by effort, by travail, and so on. Dare to do this, as again, he said this more than once, I believe. And there, I'm back again with this lovely thumbnail, which is mysterious, and yet I was very painstaking in developing this. I hope that this presentation of active imagination 5, in other words, or in other terms, Adam and the Garden of Eden, I hope this has benefited you and just demonstrated to you. I mean, look at how much I have gotten out of it just in the time, and I've not practiced this, and I've not, I've not tried to contrive all these things beforehand. I just simply open this up. I haven't looked at it in weeks, and I go through it freshly, and I see what it has to offer. And I hope that this helps you as you are curious and investigate active imagination. Hope this develops in you or helps you achieve a richer understanding of what you are seeking to know more about. So I thank you for watching. I would encourage you to subscribe if you haven't. I don't post all the time, but there should be a regular flow of videos on this channel that will help you in the field of Jungian psychology, most especially and particularly concerning active imagination. With that, thank you, and I wish you the best.